All right, we are live back on the Andre Duke Show with Carter Smith. Carter, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Happy 4th of July to everybody out there. We are, coming into a nice little holiday weekend here. So pretty pumped up. Just gonna relax. Got a couple days off. Nothing else really going on. Excited to get into it and just kind of finish out the week strong. Go celebrate our independence. Celebrate, everything that our soldiers and our military fights for every day, and just really, really America it up.
Right, gotta get the burgers and dogs on the grill, and
Yeah, I actually I got some burgers, some hot dogs, and then I'm smoking up a nice little pork shoulder to make some pulled pork. Got that going on about probably put it on around 4 a.m. this morning or tomorrow morning or this night, this evening, whatever you want to call it. Get that going for about 12 hours and really get it done right, man.
oh yeah, I got I got a bunch of chicken that I'm gonna be throwing on the grill, doing wings,
Hmm.
quarters, all that fun stuff.
Absolutely, man. Hey, it's one of my favorite holidays, honestly. Like, I mean, it might be my favorite holiday. It's just nothing better, man. Middle of summer, there's not really, there's some baseball on and stuff like that, but like sports is kind of out of hiatus, and you just get to cook out, hang out, maybe go to the pool, do whatever, and chill with your family, and just have a good time and just celebrate America for a day.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing more American than celebrating America.
Right, exactly, man. But a lot going on in the college football world over the past couple days. I mean, normally this is a little bit of a dead time, but a lot to jump into here. We'll obviously dive into some Notre Dame stuff, updates on recruiting, different things like that. But obviously, we got some big news today, but which we'll get into about Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Which, if you know anything about me or about this program or this show, we're a Midwest platform kind of thing. Like we pay attention to everything, and so I live in Columbus, Ohio, so I'm around it all the time. But it's been a big day for the Buckeyes. And so we'll get into that a little bit later, and then jump into some other things around the social media atmosphere right now with college football. Hey, just under 60 days, 59 days until kickoff for the Fighting Irish and most of college football. So big things coming.
Right, right. Cannot wait for that. We
Absolutely. And just under 3 weeks away from getting the return of NCAA college football, EA Sports releasing all their rankings, everything like that. Which I don't want to I don't want to jump the gun here, but I was going to throw up that graphic and discuss kind of what you think about where those rankings are and everything like that.
all right.
Let me see here. Let me get the graphic up on the screen for you here. Da, 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 da. There it is. So obviously, you can see up there they released who is their top teams in college football, based off of a bunch of different factors. I don't know about you, but I'm not really shocked at anything. What I mean, we can start. I mean, I'm just gonna do the top 10 because anything below the top 10, well, I guess top 15 is where they really stop because there's like 7 teams tied for 10. But top 15 wise, anything jump out at you? Anything crazy? Anything that you thought was wrong or should be altered?
Um, I, I think for the most part, the big shocking one for me is how low Florida State and Ole Miss are, and how high Utah is.
Well, now, that's where it gets a little complicated because honestly, they're all the same, right? They're all 88s overall, so they're all tied. So they're you could put them in any order, graphic wise that you want. So I wasn't hugely shocked with that. Obviously, Florida State lost a lot of talent. They replaced it. They have a bunch of guys coming back and a bunch of good recruits, and then they did a great job in the transfer portal. So I wouldn't have been shocked if Florida State was maybe an 89 instead of an 88. But throwing them into the same echelon as some of the 90s, I don't think they're quite there yet. Same with Ole Miss. Ole Miss lost obviously Quinshon Judkins, which was the best running back in the SEC. Jackson Dart is obviously a dude. And a lot of this is predicated on quarterback play. And that's why you have some of these guys where they are. But I wasn't shocked at that. I think the one that shocked me the most, if I'm being honest, is where they have Clemson.
Right.
I don't know. I guess just benefit of the doubt. Like, I mean, it's a talented roster. I'm not saying they don't have talent, but Cade Klubnik, I wasn't that impressed with. And a lot of this is based off the quarterback play and obviously the defense and everything like that as well. But I just don't see it. But I guess, when you get into that below the top 5, everybody kind of has questionable quarterback play.
Right.
Or at least unknown.
I think they got the top 5 overalls right. LSU is going to be a question mark with Garrett Nussmeier, Penn State Drew Aller, but the one that really sticks out to me is Iowa, the Hawkeyes being an 87 overall. Is that just based off their defense?
Yeah, I would have to go back and look at what their defensive ranking is, but I'm sure their defense carries that ranking. I mean, overall, their offense, I mean, they have talent. They have some players, and like the group of schools that they're grouped in with, I don't hate. The one that's shocking to me to be in that same group is Colorado. I'm guessing Travis Hunter's a 99 and Shador's like a 98 or something, and that really boosts their ranking. But when you look at it, like Oklahoma, solid. Wisconsin, unknown. USC, unknown on defense. Not real sure what they're going to be on offense. I mean, it's Lincoln Riley, so probably really good. Virginia Tech, North Carolina State, Kansas, Arizona, Oklahoma. Like, those are all second-tier teams that could make the playoff, but most likely won't, right? So I'm not overly shocked at Iowa being an 87. I think that's a little high for them. But overall, it's, I don't hate the group that they're with.
I think the Michigan ranking is very interesting as well. Having everything that they lost last year. I think they have a lot of question marks on offense. So
yeah, they do. I mean, their O-line is going to be good. They have Donovan Edwards at running back. He's going to be a bona fide stud. Obviously, Alex Orji or whoever the quarterback is it a question mark? But their defense carries them again. I mean, their defense is going to be fine. It's going to be really good. One of the best defenses in the country. Will Johnson's the best corner in the country. So I wasn't overly shocked with that either. I think the one that I think is not necessarily shocking, but having Alabama at a 92, I think is a little interesting. I don't know enough. Like, Jalen Milroe, a question mark. I think they obviously have talent up and down that roster. They did lose Caleb Downs, which we'll touch on later in the show, and how big of a loss that could be or is. But overall, I mean, I'm not upset that Alabama's 92. I think that Texas is a better team overall. Just based off of Quinn Ewers alone, I think that maybe puts them more into the Oregon 93 category. But overall, I mean, and Ohio State being 2 at 93. I mean, I don't think that's a stretch. I think they are getting carried wildly by how talented their roster is. Their defense is phenomenal. Probably, I mean, I know it's ranked in EA Sports as the best defense in college football, and probably will be. They have talent at every position on offense. The question mark is the quarterback. Is Will Howard the guy? Is Devin Brown the guy? Is either one of those guys capable of being a top-tier quarterback in college football? I don't know.
Or is Julian Sayin the guy?
Let me just tell you right now, Julian Sayin, not the guy this year. So and anybody who wants to push that narrative, it's not happening. All right. So quit asking. Julian Sain's going to sit and have a nice he might play, he'll play 3 or 4 games if they're blowing people out to make sure they don't burn that red shirt. But no, he's not the guy. It's Devin Brown or Will Howard. They're the two fighting for the job. And if you've noticed, I mean, again, I said I lived in Columbus. The beat has kind of cooled off on it's Will Howard topic. I mean, for months I heard how you don't pay a guy $1 million to not be the starter. Will Howard's the starter, even if Ryan Day hasn't said it and all that. And all of a sudden in the past week or two, they've kind of cooled off on that and just been, well, he could be the guy, but it's still a competition, which is what I've heard all along.
Well, when it comes to the beat, they are very narrative driven. When it comes to the Will Howard situation, when it comes to this, after the way everything was handled last year, I'm not leaving any stone unturned here, just for the simple fact of you made a bad decision last year, Ryan, and it torpedoed your season. And then your starting quarterback before the bowl game leaves and you lose to Missouri in probably one of the most embarrassing games Ohio State's played in his tenure.
Absolutely. And that's something we'll touch on with the Ryan Day topic. That is the kind of topic du jour, the topic of the day, especially with everything that's going on today. But I mean, that Missouri game, they had a freaking train wreck of offensive line show up. I mean, it wasn't their starting offensive line. The defense played really, really great for most of the game, but their offense couldn't move the ball as soon as Devin Brown went down. So I don't hold a lot of stock in that, but that's the worry is if it is Devin Brown over Will Howard, can Devin Brown stay healthy? On top of that, if it is Will Howard, can Will Howard elevate himself to be an elite quarterback that is at a school like Ohio State? Because I hate to tell you, Ohio State and Kansas State are not the same.
Right. There's two different standards, not taking a dig at Kansas State, but,
No, dig at Kansas State all day. You're not Ohio State. Get over it. Anyways.
Well,
I know what you mean.
But you gotta think that you're coming into a different situation that is Ohio State. Your coach is making $10 million a year. He's lost to Michigan 3 years in a row. If you're not going to say that seat is not hot, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, Ryan Day knows he's on the hot seat. And so this is a pivotal year for him. And there's nothing more to be said about that. There's one game this year that he absolutely cannot lose, and he knows that. Obviously, number one team in the rankings is Georgia. I think that's a pretty I didn't have any problem with it. I think they're the best team in college football. Ohio State and Georgia have probably the two most talented rosters in college football, and Georgia has an established quarterback. So I have no issue with that.
Right. I think Carson Beck might. I don't know if he'll be the number one overall pick. If he plays, I think if he plays really well, they go undefeated to win the Natty. I think it might be par for the course. But last year there was so many quarterbacks in the draft taken, so I guess we'll see. But on the other end of it, you had first round quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett, i.e. Justin Fields. They got shipped for string cheese and a Lunchable.
Absolutely, and I mean that's just how it goes if you've been in the league for a couple of years and you haven't produced. I mean, Mac Jones, same thing. Most of the Justin Fields draft has been an absolute train wreck. So it is what it is.
And the other thing too is, guys, if you're watching on X or Twitter, come on over to YouTube and join the chat, and also hit the like and subscribe button for us so we can grow the show.
Absolutely. And then kind of we touched on Caleb Downs because I think Alabama lost some talent in the portal. They brought a little bit in, and DeBoer has been absolutely on fire on the recruiting trail, which is a good sign for Alabama. But this question was posed, I think it was On3 on who would be the most impactful transfer defensive back in the country. Obviously, there's been a lot of transfers this year and some really notable ones. They highlighted 3, and I'll put that graphic up real quick and then just see what you have to think. I know my answer, and I think, and I'm willing to die on that hill. But here, let me throw it up here real quick. What do we got? So obviously, anybody watching, you can see the graphic up there. These are the 3 guys that I think are the top 3, right? You have Jabbar Muhammad, Cormani McClain, and then obviously Caleb Downs for Ohio State. And I'll let you lead it off. Let me know if you think something different. I'm sure anybody listening, I have my thoughts, and I think it's pretty clear cut.
I'm going to go out on a limb on this one and say that I think Caleb Downs might be one of the top 5 players in college football. Just, he had a rough go of it last year, coming into this defense with the talent that is on the field on the defensive side of the ball at Ohio State. I don't see how he's not going to be the biggest impact player for the Buckeyes on defense. And that goes into, how well JTT plays this year. But I think Caleb Downs is hands down going to be one of the great players in college football this year. And then Jabbar Muhammad, I think he's going to have a huge impact at Oregon as well. So
no, I completely agree. I think the clear answer is Caleb Downs. All right. He is going to be the best safety in college football this year. He was already one of the best safeties in college football last year. He's coming into a defense that was already a top 5 defense, and he's going to free up Sonny Styles to go play linebacker. He's going to make that Ohio State defense elite level defense. On top of that, reports came out that he's been toting the rock and been in running backs meeting. I seriously think if they do go that route, I think most of that is for him to get comfortable carrying the football in the return game mostly. I don't think they're actually going to play him at running back a lot. I could be wrong. You never know. Obviously, injuries happen. Trayvon Henderson is kind of known for that. So if it happens and they feel like they need some depth at that position after losing Dallin Hayden, and he can do that, so that's great. But I think if he gets in the return game, he's going to have a huge role in the defense, being everywhere. I'm telling you, if he gets some offensive snaps, I wouldn't be shocked to see Caleb Downs in the Heisman conversation.
Right, with the Travis Hunter. And then let's go to the last guy on this list. Cormani McClain, 5-star out of Florida, goes to Colorado. He chased the lights, camera, actions, and he has known to say that he doesn't want to play for clicks, i.e. using Dan Landing's line. But I've also heard conflicting reports, somebody that's out there. I've heard the kid referred to as he didn't go to class and didn't do what he was supposed to do, and that's why he didn't get on the field. And
could be.
And I don't know. I don't think Colorado's for everybody. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of eyeballs out there, and I think it's a tough program to be a part of, just in my opinion. And there was a little controversy when he entered the transfer portal. He jumped into space with some people and was making a joke about some of the things the Colorado people trying to, like, hey, man, you need to pick it up and get it together. And he was laughing at him. So can Billy Napier turn the kid around? I don't know. We'll see. But if he transfers out of Florida, I think the label is going to be correct. Or if he gets deemed ineligible, which I don't think they'll let that happen, but kid's got to go to class.
Yeah, I mean, I think here's what I know is the kid is supremely talented. He's an excellent athlete. He can play the position. He can play defense. He can do everything you want a guy to do. Outside of the field and off the field, I know nothing about him, obviously. But he's got all the talent in the world. He's going to be, I think, a very impactful player for Florida. The reason that I have him third on this list out of these three is because Florida is not a contender for anything other than going 5-7. So is it going to be impactful that he's on the team? No, they're going to lose 7 games with or without him. They might lose 8 if they don't have him, I guess. But he's not going to impact that team in a noticeable way this year. Now, I think he could impact them down the road if he can get everything together and if his talent translates to his on-field play, and he can, if there are off-the-field issues, if he can get those in check, which Florida is maybe a good place to do that, but maybe not. So I don't have any issues with him, and that Colorado shit show is a whole different thing. So I don't put a lot of stock into what people say about players that left the program, because they have a history of people that leave they talk shit about. So I'm not going to put a lot of stock in that. We'll see what he does at Florida. If Billy Napier gets fired and he decides to leave again, you're going to start to hear some of that, well, he's a cancer in the locker room talk. But at the same time, if his coach gets fired, I have no problem with him leaving.
Yeah, I think on the Carmani front, it's going to be a lot of I mean, he is a super talented kid. It's just going to be a lot of wait and see if he can get on the field and produce.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think so. I think we're in agreement there that, Caleb Downs is obviously, in my opinion, the most impactful of those three, and the most impactful transfer DB. I think he's the most impactful transfer other than maybe a quarterback.
I think Dylan Gabriel is going to be really good for Oregon this year. So,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. And then going through just some more stuff over here. This one leads into kind of our topic du jour. So William Howard came out today, or in the past 2 days, I can't remember when. And he had a quote on Barstool Sports, which is pretty indicative of the mindset within the Ohio State locker room and within kind of Buckeye Nation, I think. And that is this. And I'm going to turn it over to you before I go in on this. It's natty or bust. In your opinion, is it natty or bust for Ohio State?
I think that if you're looking at the natty, I think you're looking way too far ahead. And with all the other stuff that happened today, I think the biggest thing, if I'm Ohio State and Ryan Day, that I need to worry about is how about we win the damn Big Ten championship, and how about we beat Michigan before anything else. And I get it. You guys spent a lot of money, not you guys, but Ohio State spent a lot of money in the offseason to put this team together. And if you do not beat Michigan or win the Big Ten, you are going to be looking for a job.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's kind of my sentiment too. I'll touch on really 2 things, because I don't hate this mindset. I think absolutely you have goals. You know that you were brought in, assuming you're the starter. You're not even the starter yet, first of all. And you're talking about natty or bust. How about win the job or bust? You were paid $1 million allegedly to come in here and be the guy, and you haven't even won the job yet. And you're talking about it's natty or bust. I get it. It's a team game. Your team is set up for that. Even if you're not the quarterback, they should be able to compete for a national title. Understood. And absolutely, you have goals. But, dude, for me, this is just a microcosm of a much larger problem at Ohio State. This is the same mentality they've had for 3 years. And it's missing the point entirely. I've heard this is now the 3rd player I've heard come out and say this. And I think it's great that they talk about it in the locker room. I think it's great that they understand the expectations. But every player in that locker room should be focused on one thing. It's beat Michigan or we're fucked. It's beat Michigan or you're gone. It's beat Michigan or you can't show your face in Columbus, Ohio ever again. And that's what's being missed here. I don't want kids. I don't mind kids coming out and having lofty aspirations and having goals and having all this. But you got to, when you're asked this question, I'm sure this clip was a leading question that led into, is it natty or bust or whatever it was. I didn't hear the interview, so I don't know. But if you're asked, what are your expectations for the year? What do you guys, is it a natty or bust? You say, listen, I think we can compete for a national championship, but right now our team is focused on getting better every day. And we're focused on beating that team up north. That's our focus, beating the team up north, winning a Big Ten title, and accomplishing our goals. And that's saying it without saying it, right? Our goals are to beat Michigan. First and foremost, beat Michigan. That's goal number 1. Number 2, win a Big Ten title. That's goal 2. Number 3, win a national championship. If we beat Michigan and we accomplish our goals, we'll do the other 2 too. But if you're not focused at this point in the summer on beating Michigan every single day, you don't have to worry about another opponent until August. Right now, every single day should be talking about beating Michigan, beating that team up north, correcting the wrongs that you've gone through for the past 3 years. Because there are people on this roster that have been here for 3 years. Will Howard's not one of them. He hasn't lost to Michigan. But guess what? You're here now. You need to understand the task at hand. You need to understand where you are. You're in Columbus, Ohio, playing for Ohio State. It is not – the rivalry is different here. It's not Kansas State playing Kansas, all right? It's Ohio State, Michigan. It's the biggest rivalry in all of sports, and it's not being talked about. And that's just a microcosm of the problem at Ohio State. They don't get it. And I still firmly believe Ohio State beats Michigan this year. It's not going to be an issue. Ryan Day maybe goes on to win a natty. Who cares at that point? As long as he beats Michigan, as long as he is competing for a Big Ten title, as long as he's in the playoff, he's safe. If he doesn't beat Michigan, doesn't win a Big Ten title, and is an 8 seed in the playoff, buddy, your bags are packed. So Ryan, this is a message from above that's not getting through. And I promise you, I know former Ohio State coaches very well, and my grandfather was one of them. This shit is not being drilled into their head. Urban Meyer had a clock in the weight room that had a countdown to the Michigan game, no matter what week it was, no matter what time of year it was. The day after or the day of the game, it reset to 365 days or whenever that was the next year, because he always knew that game has to be on the forefront of your mind at all times because it's different. And that's what they've lost over the past 4 years. They've lost that edge. They've lost that mental acuity. They've lost everything that made Ohio State what it was when it went on that 20 whatever year run of, Tressel was like 12-2, and then Urban was 7-0, so 19-3 because of the Fickle year. They lost that edge. And this isn't how you get it back. You don't get it back by talking about national championships. You get it back by focusing on a singular thing and making that your mission. Now, where Urban stumbled is you might slip up against an Iowa or a Purdue. And I can promise you, being around Buckeye fans 24/7, they would much rather have you slip up against an Iowa or Purdue, beat Michigan or Virginia Tech, beat Michigan, and play for a playoff spot than lose to Michigan, lose the Big Ten, and lose in the playoffs.
100%. I couldn't agree more. It's to the point to where I'm not saying it's laughable, but there is a bigger task at hand. Losing that game means you are going to be in the unemployment line. I'm not saying for long, but I'm just saying you cannot lose that game. I do not care what
and
anyone
that's
says.
something my grandfather told me it when John Cooper was the coach and when Tressel was the coach and when Urban was the coach. He reiterated it. Listen, it's all well and good to go 11-1 every year, but if that one loss is to Michigan, you might as well go 1-11 and beat Michigan because it's the same thing. So at least you beat Michigan in the 1-11 scenario. And not that you can keep your job at Ohio State going 1-11, obviously. But if you're beating Michigan, you got a lot more grace. And if you're losing to Michigan, I mean, we'll talk about it in depth here in a minute, but look at John Cooper. I mean, that's how you lose your job, man. Lose to Michigan more than a couple times. You'll lose your job real quick.
Yes, and also if you're watching out there on Twitter, come on over to YouTube and join the chat and hit the like and subscribe so we can grow the show.
Absolutely. Kind of parlaying off of that, there's big news in Buckeye Nation today, and I don't know how to feel about this. It's a big loss for the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's a huge loss in my opinion, and it's not the first one. And so that's kind of why the show is taking a turn towards Ohio State right now. We'll jump into some Notre Dame stuff after this, but obviously big commitment came out today around 1 p.m. Eastern time. One of the best players in Ohio announced his commitment, and Ohio State, everybody in the world had crystal balled Ohio State for him for months and months and months. And then today around 10 a.m., all of a sudden, some of these recruiting services and these insiders and these beat reporters started switching their crystal ball. And turns out Justin Hill, who's, I believe, down from Cincinnati area, big-time defensive end prospect, one of the best players in the state of Ohio, decided to commit to Alabama. Huge win for Kalen DeBoer, huge win for Alabama. I think this is a problem if you're Ryan Day. This is a problem of losing in-state talent, and I'll let you talk about it first, and then I'll give you my thoughts, but it just – there's something to this. They're losing kids. They lost a couple kids out west. Obviously, they got Tavian St. Clair, so they locked up one of the best players in the state at the quarterback position. But they're just not keeping that homegrown talent in state right now, and I think that's a problem.
Well, one of the issues I have with this is that you're letting the first-year Alabama coach come into your state and take one of your top players, not to mention that you've lost out on 3 or 4 other kids, this week, which is also a problem. Justin Hill, I think this commitment right here is starting to sum up the tenure under Ryan Day a little bit. And the Buckeye fans, you guys want to blame Larry Johnson? You guys are morons. This is not a Larry Johnson problem. Okay.
It's not, and I'm not going to let Larry skate by though. It's not 100% Larry Johnson at all.
It goes to everybody on the staff because you work as a team when it comes to recruiting, and if not everybody's pulling their weight, I'm tired of the recruiting excuses that are coming out of the camp because you don't have Parker Fleming anymore, you don't have Corey Dennis, you got rid of all of the Ryan Day cousins. You got rid of the interns. And I don't exactly know. On an in-state kid, in my opinion, the head coach should be handling the recruitment. And I'm not giving Ryan Day a pass on this because to a program that you can lose to, losing to Alabama, Georgia, those are pretty much your top competition outside of Michigan on the national landscape. You have got to lock these kids up in state because it's just like trying to go down to Louisiana and trying to pull a kid out of there. You don't do it very often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think here's what it is. And this is why this is the problem. And I've been told it for a long time, and I've defended Ryan Day specifically for a long time about this because I believe Ryan Day is an excellent coach. I believe he is absolutely capable of coaching Ohio State to a national championship. I think he's absolutely capable of building a program and succeeding. The issue that it becomes is this is becoming this isn't a one-off. This isn't a rare scenario. Ohio State's losing kids from the state of Ohio somewhat frequently, and they're not keeping their talent in state. And there's been one other coach in my lifetime, and maybe in the history of Ohio State, that had this issue. And everybody was told that it's okay. He's recruiting at such a high level nationally that he can make up for it. And that's John Cooper. John Cooper was the one that took Ohio State from a regional recruiting base to a national recruiting superpower. He did it, and he got some of the most talented recruiting classes in Ohio State history into Ohio State. The problem was, when you don't have an Ohio guy as the head coach, which John Cooper and Ryan Day are the only two that are not Ohio guys since Woody Hayes, probably before that even, this is what happens. You lose Ohio recruits, and then what happens? You don't have an Ohio guy. You don't have somebody who understands the rivalry. You don't have somebody who understands Ohio State fully, and you lose to Michigan. And it's a cycle. John Cooper went through it. He was coach for 12 years and was 2-9-1 or 2-10-1 or whatever it was against Michigan. Ryan Day has been the coach for 5 years, and he's 1-3 because COVID got skipped. This is what happens. You lose, and you have to understand, these recruits that are in Ohio now they've never seen. I mean, this kid right here, he was 7th or 8th grade when Ohio State last beat Michigan. You don't think that plays a role? And he was 7th or 8th grade when they last put out a defensive end into the NFL. I'm just saying, I mean, and Zach Harrison doesn't count, but a big-time defensive end. But that all plays a role. And if you cannot lock up the border of Ohio, you're going to lose some kids from Northern Ohio to Michigan. That's fine. You let them take Toledo, whatever. But kids from the main part of Ohio, your main recruiting base is Columbus, Cincinnati, Dayton, Cleveland. Those are going to be your main areas that have the bigger schools, that have the bigger time commits. You're going to get your one-off in Bellefontaine, like Tavy and St. Clair and stuff like that. You got to be able to get those kids. But you have to put a border around the state of Ohio, and any kid that is a 4- or 5-star kid in the state of Ohio, dude, you grew up watching Ohio State football. Every kid I know from Ohio grew up wanting to be a Buckeye. And if you can't get that kid, that's a problem. That is an absolute issue. And it just translates on the field. And what this tells me is Kalen DeBoer in his first year at Alabama understands what Alabama is and understands how to recruit. And I'm not saying Ryan can't recruit. He's done a great job, but you have to lock down the state of Ohio. You can't lose kids like this. And it's not done. I'm not saying it. Listen, he's committed to Alabama. There's still a long road ahead. I know some people that I've talked to said it's an NIL thing. The NIL at Ohio State was focused on a couple other players and couldn't commit to what he wanted, and Bama did. And once they figure out those other players, they'll come back to him and figure the NIL out. So this kid could still go to Ohio State. And if that happens, absolutely, great job. But if you're losing kids like this out of Ohio to especially SEC schools, because right now your only competition is the SEC and a couple big schools in the Big Ten. If you're losing kids to those schools that are from your home state, they grew up watching the Buckeyes, they grew up probably Buckeye fans, and you can't lock them down, that's a problem.
100%. And let's put the John Cooper stuff in context. John Cooper's record at Ohio State was 111-43, and he got fired. But like we've said on this show before, whether it's Woody Hayes, whether it's your grandfather, whether it's John Cooper, whether it's Jim Tressel or Urban Meyer, there is only one-way tickets out of the Woody, and it's walking papers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Nobody leaves Ohio State for any other reason other than they got fired. And majority of the time, that's because they lost to Michigan. There's some politics that go into some of them. Woody obviously punched a kid. That you can't really do that. Urban, everybody is well aware of that, what happened there and the politics behind that. My grandfather as well. I mean, he had a good record against Michigan, but it came down to politics. But and same with Tressel. Tressel came down to a scandal. And looking back on it, was kind of a bullshit scandal, but it is what it is. So nobody leaves Ohio State on their own terms. They get told to leave. And so if Ryan Day doesn't lock this down, and it starts on the field. He has to go out there and he has to fix the problem. And the problem is he's not beating his rival. He's not winning the Big Ten. And so high school kids are like, well, I can compete for championships at all these other schools and win the SEC and win, rivalry games. And I can't do that at Ohio State right now. I can't beat Michigan. I can't win the Big Ten. I might make the playoff because, especially now with it being a 12-team playoff, but you haven't shown me that you can do anything beyond that. So that to me is a huge problem. And Ryan Day has approximately 4 months, 6 months, 5 months to fix it.
Yes.
But shifting gears here a little bit and getting into some more Notre Dame stuff. There's again, it's July 4th. Everybody have a happy holiday, but there's not a lot going on at these schools. Obviously, recruiting's ramping back up a little bit. You're getting some commitments and things like that. Nothing on the Notre Dame front so far as new commitments or anything like that. But we are under 60 days until the kickoff at Kyle Field. Texas A&M under the lights, nationally televised, huge game. Lot to prepare for there. Just a couple things that came out. I saw some obviously way too early mock drafts and things like that. And ESPN is projecting that Notre Dame will have 2 top 20 NFL draft picks next spring. Can you guess who they are?
Benjamin Morrison and Riley Leonard.
Yep. So Benjamin Morrison, completely agree. I think that dude is a lock to be probably top 15. He is one of the elite corners in college football. Showed it over the past couple of years and is, barring injury or anything like that, I think he's a lock. He's going to be up there with the likes of Will Johnson, Denzel Burke, and those guys, and Travis Hunter and those guys. So they have him projected to go number 13 to none other than your Steelers.
I mean, he looked great in black and gold, just trading the blue and gold for the black and gold. This is something that as looking at the notes today that we came up with, do you think this could be the deepest cornerback class in the NFL draft coming up? And I know this is projecting, but you know how we had a run on offensive players last year? I think it could flip in this year in the draft. We could have a run on defensive players because there's potentially 4 first-round corners. So
yeah, absolutely. I think there are definitely 4 first-round corners. I think there could be 5. And that seems to be how it goes with the draft. Like one year it's all offense, the next year it's a lot of defense. I think there's a lot of really great defensive prospects out there this year. Defensive back specifically, defensive line as well, edge rushers, things like that. There's going to be some really good guys that are out there, which makes me excited for my Browns because we have a first-round pick for the first time since, I don't know, Paul Brown was coaching or something. Who knows? But absolutely, I think this year it flips. I think you're probably going to see probably 15 to 20 defensive players taken in the first round. Obviously, you're going to have your quarterbacks go as well. Wide receiver, there's some good wide receivers out there, but I think, overall, it's going to be more of a heavily defensive draft in the first round just because of the amount of talent that's out there. But then the second player off the board for the Fighting Irish is none other than your starting quarterback, Riley Leonard. They have him going number 20 to none other than the New York Jets.
hopefully you slide a little bit. I wouldn't want to go to the Jets, although Garrett Wilson is a huge selling point. But
Yeah, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams. I mean, they got some weapons out there. They're not a bad. And who's their running back? The dude that broke his Brees Hall.
yes, Brees Hall.
Yeah, they have some good playmakers out there. And obviously, and honestly, going number 20 to the Jets, I'm assuming Aaron Rodgers plays another year or two after that, so you'd get to sit behind him as long as he's healthy. Wouldn't be the worst thing for him. Here's my question, though. I don't quite get the projection.
Well, the projection is because he got deemed the winner of the Manning camp.
Yeah, which is all. I mean, that's all fine and well. That's good for him. But I haven't seen it on the field. I mean, you look at his stats over the 2 years that he really played at Duke. 2022, obviously, the only year that he played even remotely a full year. But 64% completion, just shy of 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 6 picks. It's a good year. That's a solid year for any quarterback in college football. Obviously, the ground numbers help because he can move. But top 20 pick in the NFL draft, I don't know about that. Last year, obviously injured most of the year, only played 6 games. But in those 6 games, 57.6% completion, only 1,100 yards, and then 3 touchdowns, 3 picks.
Right. And I just cannot believe that they would have a mock draft out already when nobody has taken a single snap of college football, which blows my mind.
Well, they do it every year, man. They do it. I mean, they do mock drafts the day after the draft. Like after Caleb Williams went 1, they probably had a mock draft out going, Carson Beck's going to go number 1 next year. Like they do it all the time. I'm not shocked about that. I'm just shocked. I haven't seen anything on film, on stat sheets, on anything that leads me to believe this guy's a first-round pick. Now, I'm not saying he can't be. He's obviously coming into Notre Dame, which is a little bit higher profile position than Duke. And he's going to be working with Mike Denbrock. And I think a lot of people are putting stock in that because of Denbrock's background, specifically with Jayden Daniels recently. But my thing is, his skill position players are, I mean, they don't have a first round offensive player on the roster right now, other than maybe a lineman or a tight end. But you're telling me that he's going to go from 57% completion to hopefully 70, because that's where you want a quarterback to be in college. If you're going to take him in the first round, is right around 70%. And he's going to knock down. Now, he only threw 6 picks in 2022, so his turnovers weren't bad there. But he had a 1-to-1 ratio in 6 games last year. So I just haven't seen it yet. I'm not saying he can't get there. I'm not saying Notre Dame won't elevate his game. I just don't see, with the weapons he has and what he's shown me on film and the couple screws in his ankle or leg, that he's going to go first round. That to me is a bit of a stretch. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm proven wrong.
Right. And it's a lot of it, like I've said the last couple of shows, it's a lot of wait and see. It's all wait and see right now at this point, because this is the last month without football. And I think the first game technically kicks off this year is the Delaware State Hornets in the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. I am looking forward to that matchup as well.
It's going to be a thriller, let me tell you. They still have Tommy Chang.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, and you're throwing to the likes of Jayden Thomas and Chris Mitchell and some of those other guys, which I'm not saying they're bad players. They're good receivers, but I just don't see how he puts up the numbers to warrant being a top 20 pick. And kind of piggybacking off of that, Jayden Thomas was reading about him and saw some things come out where can Jayden Thomas be a true wide receiver 1? I don't know.
The thing that comes down to it for me is the production has to be there. We've been very critical of the wide receivers and the wide receiver room this offseason, just for the simple fact of I was in a couple of Twitter spaces last night and we were talking about this. You got to put it on tape and you got to put it on the field and you got to produce. You can go out there and say that, you can go out there and cook the 3 MAC teams and the 2 academy schools on the schedule. You're only doing what you're supposed to, so bravo. But when's it going to matter whenever you go down to Texas A&M? Can you do it against Florida State? Can you do it against USC? And I also don't think Purdue's going to be a slouch this year. So,
well, my thing is, and this is just breaking down some of his tape. I watched some of it today, and looking at him. He's big. He's not a big guy. Like, he's 6'1". He's not 6'4". He's not blazing fast. Everybody is basing it off of his Sun Bowl performance, which was not. He didn't light it up. I mean, he had better games last year than the Sun Bowl, but he was a main focus of the offense in the Sun Bowl. He had 4 catches for 59 yards and a touchdown. So that's an all right game. I mean, that's nothing. You're not lighting the world on fire. And I saw some beat reporters and things like that saying, well, if you extrapolate that out over 13 games, that's 52 catches for almost 800 yards and 13 touchdowns. Well, first of all, he's not scoring a touchdown every game. Second of all, is 52 catches and 800 yards really wide receiver 1? Like, that's a good year, but it's by no means lighting the world on fire. And on top of that, like I said, he's 6'1", and his 40 time was a 4.6, so he's not blazing fast. He's not blowing by anybody. They say he has deceptive speed, which is code name for not that fast. And
it's like the white wide receiver coming out, gamer, worker, grinder.
Yeah, he's a gym rat. Okay,
yes.
Cool. Like,
okay, but he's not very fast.
But he's slow. Got it. And I just don't see him making that jump. I think somebody else has to be the one to make the jump to be wide receiver 1, whether it be a Chris Mitchell, Jayden Greathouse, or even somebody like Bo Collins, who's kind of an unknown. But I don't see that wide receiver or that wide receiver 1 on the roster right now. I think there's some really good young prospects that could become that, but they're young. And I don't think Jayden Thomas can be counted on to be that this year. I think he'll be a good player. I think he'll produce. I think if you told me he had 50 catches, 750 yards, and 8 touchdowns, I'd say, yeah, that's okay. That's a decent year. I mean, that's a pretty good year. But you're not talking about guys that are going for over 1,000 yards, 100 catches, and 12 touchdowns. Like, there's nobody on the roster that's going to do that. And the good news, I think, for Notre Dame is they don't need anybody to do that. They have enough depth at the wide receiver position that is they can have 4 or 5 guys with 400 or 500 yards and get that production out of the roster, and also rely on the running game that I think is going to be strong. But I just don't see how Riley Leonard and Jayden Thomas can be a 1-2 punch, or like a duo that competes with some of the other duos in college football.
Right. I think, like we've been saying, coming in to the offseason, coming into this year, it's like Texas A&M, you're going to have to show me for me to believe it. Mm-hmm. And, I think that where the wide receiver room is at Notre Dame is fantastic, because you can have some guys reach up and grab it and take it. And, who wants to be number 1?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the Michigan guy says, who's got it better than us? Who wants to be number 1?
Yeah. No, and I think the thing is, and this is no slight on Faison, because I think he's a solid player. But if he's your leading receiver this year, you've had a problem. There needs to be some of these talented young receivers or these transfers that come in like Bo Collins that step up and become big-time playmakers if you want to compete on the national level. The biggest issue Notre Dame's had in the past, 30 years is they don't have the elite talent to compete on the national level. Every time they get to a game against an SEC school, a Big Ten school like Ohio State, they get outplayed. Now, luckily last year, Ohio State had a really shitty quarterback that kept Notre Dame in the game for a long time. And then Notre Dame shot themselves in the foot 35 times at the end of the game. But you need somebody that's going to step up and be a playmaker. And if Jayden Thomas is going to be that guy for you, I just don't see it.
Right. And, rounding out the wide receiver talk, I think it's, kind of a little bit of a shit or get off the pot for Bo Collins. You want to play in the NFL? This is your year. So
yeah, he's going to have to come in. I think he could come in and be a big-time player. I like him a lot.
Because he had a lot of hype coming out of high school, and I talked with a lot of people that are in, Ohio State recruiting. Ohio State actively recruited him for a long time. They wanted him but he just decided to go to Clemson, and with Dabo and the Cousins, and, as all of that goes, it's just wild to me. In a side note, I seen a lot of Clemson fans bagging on DJU. DJU, after going back and watching the tape when he played against Notre Dame, that Clemson offense was not very good. So there's a lot of times it's like, well, where do you want him to throw the ball? So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, he didn't look good at all, but he didn't have a lot of help.
No,
but kind of switching gears here, let's touch on some recruiting stuff real quick, just to get an update out there on some things that are going on in the recruiting world. Obviously, recruiting is the lifeblood of the program. Not a lot going on, which is good news. Which is good news for Notre Dame fans. The quieter it is right now, the better. You don't want a lot of noise. One thing I did see, their 2026 quarterback, four-star kid Noah Grubb. He's locked in, man. I was watching some of his tape and reading some interviews with him. He's locked into Notre Dame, which is huge for that class. He's not communicating with other schools, doesn't plan on visiting any other schools. Obviously, this is a 2026 kid. A lot can change over the next year and a half. But he's really locked into Notre Dame, loves the culture, loves the staff. A quote here that I saw, he was excited to come back to South Bend for something they have going on called the Grill and Chill, just to hang out with the coaches. And he said, and this is the part that I love, because it's what you need. He said, I'm going to be there to recruit people, letting them know how the 2026 class at South Bend is going to be special. This kid's a 6'4", 6'5" quarterback, only 195 pounds right now, but he's got a couple years to put on some weight and to get bigger. But huge get for them, and having him locked in like that is going to be special. So everybody, that's a big time one. I think he could be the Deuce Knight of the 2026 class, assuming Deuce Knight stays committed.
Right. And I think that, I think Marcus Freeman is addressing the big issue that is the quarterback room. Mm-hmm. And, Brian Kelly left the quarterback room in disarray.
Oh, for sure.
In the transfer portal era, you got to have kids that you can build upon. So I think outside of that, I think Marcus is doing a really good job at addressing that.
Absolutely. And I think here's the thing people have to understand, because everybody talks about Marcus going out and getting transfer quarterbacks every year because he's done it the past two and everything like that. When you step into a job and the quarterback room is not where it needs to be, that's really your only option for immediate impact. You can't go recruit a 18-year-old kid to come in and be the starter at Notre Dame. Like, that just doesn't happen. Like, I mean, Brady Quinn and Tommy Reese are probably the last two that started as freshmen, and Brady didn't start right away. And that's just not a sustainable model in today's college football, to try to start a true freshman at quarterback. So he's done what he had to do. But the biggest thing he's done is he's addressing it in the recruiting as well, by getting kids like Deuce Knight and Noah Grubb to commit. And just transitioning into a 2025 update. Obviously, Notre Dame had the number one class for a while there. I told everybody, don't get too hyped up on that. The other schools have like 12 commits. They're going to catch up, and they did. So Notre Dame is looking at like top 5, number 4 or so right now. I'll pose the question to you. Do you think Notre Dame finishes with a top 5 recruiting class in 2025?
After seeing the runs that LSU and Alabama have been on, I'm going to say no. Do I think they'll stay in the top 10? Yes. Do I think they'll finish 7 or 8, maybe even 6, but if a couple of these other schools get it cranking and a couple of flips, a little bit of this, a little bit of that happens, Notre Dame could maybe take a tumble. Ohio State also has the looming possible commitment coming from Derek Sanders Jr. He has not committed yet. So even though Ohio State's number 1, but if somebody like a Tennessee grabs them, I think that will boost them up the up the ranking. Also, Pettijohn, the Pettijohn kid is not committed yet. So I think there's a lot of big time kids that still have not committed. Now, does Notre Dame need the Meadows kid? They gotta figure out where they're at with him, because I think on the offensive side of the ball, outside of interior offensive linemen, the second biggest weakness is the wide receiver room, because that's why Marcus had to dive in the portal to get it. But the big thing that I like what Marcus is doing, he's going out there and addressing the issues immediately and trying to get guys in that can play to keep him employed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to say, here's what I know. Right now, the keys to the class are, there's quite a few of them, but Deuce Knight's the number 1 key to the class. I think everything I've read again this week and every week has been that he's solid. He's not going anywhere. He's not flipping, no matter what other podcast hosts tell you. But he's not flipping to Ole Miss. He's not going to leave. So if Deuce Knight stays committed, Dallas Golden confirmed again, he's locked in. He's not talking to other people. He wants to be part of the Irish. And those two are huge. If those two stay committed, I think there's 3 names that you really need to pay attention to that could boost this class to stay in the top 5. And that is Derek Meadows, who you just mentioned. I think if he commits, that's huge. He would be probably the biggest commitment they have outside of maybe Deuce Knight. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, and then Madden Faramamo. Those 3 names. If the Irish can land 2 of them, I think there's a chance they stay in the top 5. But they have to land 2 because of the 2 schools you just mentioned. Everybody else on the recruiting rankings, everybody else has, Ohio State has 22 commits, Bama 20, Georgia 17, Notre Dame 21. Everybody's right around that 20 mark until you get down to LSU, Tennessee, and Oregon. So those 3 schools right there are 3 that could jump Notre Dame depending on how their next, 6 to 8 recruits go or commitments go. But right now, Notre Dame really needs to land one of those big 3 that I just mentioned, specifically Derek Meadows. I think that's the biggest one left, and then Owusu-Boateng as well. But if they can land 2 of those 3, I think they will secure probably a top 5 class, maybe just outside at 6. But everything's been really quiet on those 3. There hasn't been a lot of news, nothing like that. So I'm not sure when they're going to commit, but I know that right now Notre Dame's focus is on A, keeping the guys that they have committed, and B, locking in as many of those 3 guys that I just mentioned, because they lost a linebacker to Texas A&M, I believe, and they need to lock in a linebacker like Ferrariamo. And if they can get all 3 of them, it's a top 5 class.
Right. I can't agree more. And with that being said, Carter, I do have one last parting message.
Okay.
Anytime I see anything Lakers on Twitter, it is now sell the team.
Yeah, I mean, what do you want them to do, man?
Sell the team?
They're not gonna do that. Sell the team? Fuck out of here. Offer me $20 billion and maybe I'll consider it.
Sell the team.
No. What they did, here's the thing. I got no problem with what they did. Bronny James at 55. Who gives a fuck? Most guys selected at 55 never even sniffed the floor. I'm not worried about it. You mean to tell me I can draft his kid, who might turn out to be an okay player? I can keep LeBron, who's a goddamn gold mine. Why would I not do that? So if I draft Bronny and he's a bust, I'm out $8 million. Or I could draft somebody else. LeBron goes to wherever drafts Bronny because somebody's going to. And then I'm out hundreds of millions of dollars in TV revenue, in jersey sales. Bronny James has sold more jerseys in the past week than any other player in the NBA.
We're never going to agree on this issue, but sell the team. But anyway, that is the Andre Duke Show with Carter Smith. If you can, be a friend, tell a friend, share the show with somebody, and also find us on, if you don't want to look at us, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, PodBean, and we're also on TikTok. We have a TikTok page, the Andre Duke Show. We're on Twitter. Both of us are on Twitter. And hit the like and subscribe button so we can get the algorithm going and build the show up. But
absolutely.
With that being said, everybody take care and have a good evening.
Have a good 4th of July, everybody. Celebrate safely. Stay safe out there. Don't drink and drive. Don't blow your hands off with fireworks. Have a good time, though. Celebrate America. Celebrate our independence. And everybody stay blessed, y'all.
If I could end the show properly.